try one last time, one more time to find you. Here we go, there's nothing left to choose. Here we go, there's nothing left to lose. So I packed my car and headed east, where I felt your fire, sweet relief with the fire in me, so that's coming now. I don't know much, but I found you here, and I cannot wait for another year. Don't know where you're coming from, but you're coming soon. To a kid from Oregon, by way of California. All this is more than I've ever known or seen. Come on and we'll sing like we were free. Push the pedal down, watch the world around fly by us. And we'll try one last time. I'm off the floor, one more time to find you. Here we go, nothing left to choose. Here we go, nothing left to lose. To a kid from Oregon, by way of California. All this is more than I've ever known or seen. Come on and we'll sing like we were free. Push the pedal down, watch the world around fly by us. Come on and we'll try one last time. Off of the floor, one more time to find you. Here we go, there's nothing left to choose. Here we go, there's nothing left to lose.
Thank you, guys. Welcome to Collective. It is just after 5 on Sunday night, which means it's time for our live liturgy. This is Collective. If you're here and you're looking for Peter Rollins, none of us is him, but we know why you're here. Welcome also to week 2 of Anxiety and Desire. This is a 3-part series that will feature live conversations with Pete Rollins. We'll get some great content tonight and then jump to Zoom. With me, as always, Fred, singer of songs, doer of justice, organizer of communities, prophet in residence. Fred Wilson, Freddie as he'll ever be. And on the couch tonight, thank you, yeah. On the couch tonight, somehow miraculously both founder and guest, separated only by about 10 years.
Paradox. We love it.
Yeah, we love Paradox. You guys know him probably if you know him. You know him as Andrew Brooksy. He goes also now by Bodhi Daiji, Great Compassion. Feel free to ask him about that path because it's amazing. Super glad that you're here. Brooks is back with us in Florida, at least for the moment. He's back at Collective. He is also currently hosting a podcast with his teacher, Buddhist monk Bushi. You may be familiar with Bushi from the Liturgists podcast. He did a couple sessions on there on Buddhism and Christianity. So he runs the Thomasville Buddhist Center, and he's got this sort of emerging community and podcast built around sort of the connection between Buddhism and Christianity. That is called Bodhi Christo. Brooks, tell us a little bit about that. What's that about?
Well, I'd say that the two things that he draws from or pulls together, I'd say, are clarity of mind and compassionate heart.
Okay.
So we could think of like the Buddha mind and the Christ heart
Cool.
coming together. He's sort of developed his own teaching,
Okay.
drawing on the teachings from both Jesus the Christ and Gautama the Buddha. And so he has a community of people, students, and people who just, like, go to him for, see him as a spiritual, director or leader, inspiration.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm officially one of his deshis or students.
Cool. Awesome.
And yeah, it's a semi-recent thing.
Yeah.
We've only launched one episode of the podcast so far, but
Yeah.
we're getting ready to do more.
Cool.
And so be on the lookout for that.
Awesome. Yeah, so check that stuff out. You guys can find it, again, if you're looking for that, find it at Bodhi Christo. So you should be able to search for that on like podcast stuff, right?
Yep.
Awesome. Fred this week coached me through my first opportunity to be what's called a spokesperson through faith. It was phenomenal. I think it's life-changing, but we'll see.
Great job.
We'll see how it bears out. So the deal is, we just finished this series on affordable housing. You may have guessed that we didn't fix it. So we're still going to have a shortage of about 16,000 affordable housing units over the next 15 years in our county. And what we know is, in the election, we look at the world and we go, take your pick. What do we want to fix? Everything's broken. What we know is that any social, economic, healthcare related, or political future has to take account for people needing shelter. And so what we've talked about is what the intersection of justice and shelter looks like, not in the world, we can't save the world, but in our county, with the people who are in this congregation, who live in our neighborhood. So feel free to jump back, especially at YouTube. You're going to want to go to the YouTube. That's where the quality is. So youtube.com/wearecollectivechurch. But you can find all of that series there. Feel free to catch up. I know it's a lot, but you guys binge Netflix. So binge that series and get ready for tomorrow night. Fred, tell us what's going on tomorrow night.
We are having our annual Community Problems Assembly. We are having it for the first time ever over Zoom, which is going to be fun. That is the point in time where our organization has, for the last couple of months, been having house meetings all across Volusia County and our member congregations, from Catholic churches to the Sikh community, the mosque in Daytona. Whole diverse group of folks have been going and talking about what's going on in their lives and what they see in the community that needs fixing. And this is the time of year where we come and kind of hear some of those stories and vote on where we're going to bring the organization next. But because we have the 2020 elections coming up, and local offices, people are vying for those seats, and we have this ongoing campaign to get a housing trust fund in our county, we have invited all of the candidates running for county council, and all of them have RSVP'd and will be there at the assembly. We have one actually that has an emergency with their family, but she has sent her answers ahead of time. And so all the candidates are going to be together, and we're going to ask them yes or no questions on whether or not they will create a housing trust fund in 2021 if they are elected. So we're hoping to get to yes with all of them. And the more people that sign on to Zoom, they will see the numbers, and they'll hear all the voters in Volusia County. And we don't endorse candidates, but voters can get educated on where candidates stand. We hold them to the yes or no question. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And if you want to join in, all you have to do, I know Steve Tonjes has sent emails out to everyone on the faith email list in Collective, but if you haven't gotten that yet, you can also go to faithvolusia.org. That's our website, and on the front page there's a little button that says Community Problems Assembly. Click on that, and it's got the Zoom information. It's going to be 6:30 tomorrow. You don't want to miss it.
Absolutely, and you guys know that you can find a ton more stuff if you were a part of the series. There's a bunch more resources on that page. If there's any way you can join us tomorrow night, there are fewer barriers this year to your presence equating to people power than there ever have been before. And part of what we do when we show up in this way is we remind our representatives that their titles are not nouns, they're verbs. When we show up, what we are asking is that they actually represent our desires and our dreams for the way that this county would be run. That's not a title that they just get. It's a title they get when they actually represent our desires. And so we want to log on. We want to bring ourselves to show them by our presence that this is the direction we want to head in our county. So if you can make it tomorrow night, please, please, please do that. Quick shout outs real quick. Hey Kenny, hey Jim, hey Dave Malinowski, Dan Hensley. We got Jay on, Wendy. Rachel, I assume Don as well. We've got, the Vaughns are on. Hey, look at this, Bo Barrington. Hey, Bo from Wales.
Nice.
Yeah, we got folks from all over the world. Yeah. Oh, and we got Kate from Cardiff. So thrilled that you guys are here. Super pumped. Yeah, absolutely. So just to connect to this congregation, and again, this is stuff that's going on all year outside of the Pete Rollins event, but you can check out wearecollectivechurch.com. Please chat with us. You guys are already on Facebook. If you're looking for a higher quality experience, if you're looking to go back and catch up on anything collective related, please do check out the YouTube. youtube.com/wearecollectivechurch. That's going to be the highest user experience, the video quality. We'll eventually start migrating chats over there and things like that, but you want to check that out. Real quick, typical stuff this week. Yoga tomorrow, that is on. Occupy this week is going to take a pass. We're nearing the end of the Pete Rollins series, so we're going to take a week off next week. And then Thursday, we will have Collective Cares, 5:30 on Zoom. Dan, I'm really sorry. I know you sent me the agenda and the calendar this week. I didn't get a chance to open that email, so Dan will post the Collective Cares agenda, what you guys are doing in there. Thank you guys again for being with us. Thank you guys. Fred, Brooks, thank you guys. This is super exciting. Again, Pete, I know you're on watching. Thanks for being here. We say this a lot, and this is one of the nights where we really get to feel it, but your presence makes us who we are. Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. Brooks is going to share the community statement with us.
We value highly the metaphor of journey. We're different people from different places and backgrounds, representing an intergenerational community, and we've traveled different paths. So we agree not to make assumptions about the person across from us, next to us, or in conversation with us. We challenge ourselves to be sensitive, knowing this community includes a diverse group of people, from lifelong followers of Jesus to people who are just now open to the idea that God might exist. We strive to avoid offense, ask good questions, articulate, and explain our responses. We don't assume fluency in Bible, spirituality, or church language because we believe the message of Jesus is not for Christianity, but for humanity. So we do everything in the spirit of love and grace.
That's one of those gifts where you get somebody who's lived with that community statement for like over a decade.
It's a good one.
Yeah, and just just in the reading of it. All right, we're going to thank you guys again. We're going to sort of what we call maybe cleanse the spiritual palate in whatever way that works for you. So we're going to provide some drone footage, really cool drone footage with some neat back music. If you need some stimulus to ignore, but if you want to meditate on your own, feel free to mute it, shut your eyes, tune it out, however you need to do that. And what I want us to do is consider light. I know light was last week with Pete Rollins, but I want us to think about it in this way. In terms of the light that we need, part of our ambition as living creatures is to get the light while never getting the sun. If we don't get enough, we die. But if we get too much, we die. And the task of being a living creature in this world is to learn by living that in order for the sun to sustain us, we must both have it and not have it. This is the beginning of our invitation tonight to consider this ungraspable treasure. And so we will sit silently together for 3 minutes. Please join us. All right, thanks guys. Thanks again, Brandon, for that amazing drone footage. Let yourself sort of return to your senses gently. Let's call ourselves back to our own attention. So last week, Pete started this series for us that we've titled Anxiety and Desire, partially because it's 2020. And we shamelessly wanted people to care about what we're talking about, and anxiety is sort of up there on the list of things that everyone in the world is experiencing. And part of what we wanted to connect to is the way that desire plays with that, and particularly in terms of, we said last week, the desire to know and the experience of unknowing. This week we'll talk about the desire to have and the experience of not having. And part of what I want to do, we're going to sing the song in a minute called Still Trying, and I think it's, for me, just a really nice summary of kind of where we landed last week, about accepting unknowing, in the way that unknowing is neither a curse nor a destination. It's just a part of it. It's a part of this process. And then I started looking into some of the background on this guy, Nathaniel Rateliff, who sings this song. And I found an amazing interview about some recent work he's done. I just want to share this, and this resonates with me a ton. I shared with you guys a couple weeks ago. I just finished writing my ordination paperwork, and it was obviously a huge accomplishment, but if you can imagine like 160 pages of condensed journaling, it's also revelatory. And this is sort of what Rateliff says. So it says, your latest album, this is the interviewer, it says, your latest album showcases real vulnerability in your lyrics. How do you feel the music allows you to express yourself as a man when self-expression is not traditionally understood to be a cornerstone of old school masculinity? So sort of talking about toxic masculinity. And he says this, just blows my mind. He says, sometimes it comes as a surprise to me as I'm writing. Sometimes you don't really know what you're allowing yourself to write about. It can be a stream of consciousness, and later it can be devastating to realize what you allowed yourself to write about. And I had that experience. David Malinowski knows, a handful of others know intimately, yeah. But then again, he says it can be therapeutic too. Over time, he says, I've begun to accept that it's a part of the experience and a part of the journey of writing. I really enjoy it now. Like I said, it can be hard when you don't realize what it is you're writing about. And a lot of this, I found out, is driven by the work he does towards economic justice, including a broad scope of stuff, but especially organizations that work for community housing. So there's just all these streams that are coming together, I feel like. And finally, he says this recent album is an exploration of personal tragedy, the death of a close friend, the aftermath of a difficult divorce. And I think about, right, the loss of the McCulloughs in 2017, the fact that I'm a few years out of a divorce. So this stuff is close, and it's beautiful. And so that's what I want you to hear. And again, go back and watch the Pete talk from last week, but I feel like liturgically, this is the expression of maybe what we're trying to get at. Let's do it.
That's not what we practice.
Little quicker.
Sorry, I messed that up. My fault.
The joy of being live, friends. When I wake up in the morning, I'm gonna tell. I was standing looking backwards in the hours. You said there's room enough to cramping in the crowd. No movement here, no friends to break us out. stop breathing or will just twin foul? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know a goddamn thing. In these moments I forget to tell myself, and if you're rolling in it long enough, your shit won't even smell. Is there no one I can trust to point it out? I can hardly be right here. I was spitting on myself. When I wake up in the morning, I'm gonna tell. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know a goddamn thing. This wound is gonna cancel me out. 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 I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know a goddamn thing. Really do though. Go check it out. Last week. All right, what we want to do is let you hear from Pete. We have a quick reflection, and then we're going to take another little musical break, and then we're going to get right into the talk. So check out The Miser here from Pete Rollins.
This is the story of the miser and his treasure by Aesop. A miser had buried his gold in a secret place in his garden. Every day he went to the same spot, dug up the treasure and counted it piece by piece to make sure that it was all there. He had made so many trips that a thief, who had been quietly observing him, guessed what the miser had hidden, and one night dug up the treasure and made off with it. When the miser discovered his loss, he was overcome with grief and despair. He groaned and he cried and he tore his hair. "My gold," cried the miser wildly. "Someone has robbed me." "Your gold? There in that hole?" said a passerby. "Why did you not keep it in the house where you could easily get it when you had to buy things?" "Buy?" screamed the miser angrily. "Why, I'd never touched the gold. I couldn't think of ever spending it." The stranger picked up a large stone and threw it into the hole. "If that's the case," he said, "then just cover up that stone. It is worth just as much to you as the treasure you lost."
lost and you're lonely, go and figure out why. Take a trip to your dark side, go on and have a good cry. 'Cause we're all lonely, yeah, we're all lonely together. I wanna see your sadness, I want to share your sin, I want to bleed your blood, and I want to be let in. Don't we all just wanna be together? So leave what's heavy, what's heavy behind. Leave what's heavy, what's heavy behind. If your face is down, take a look around. Do your fingers move? Do your lungs inflate? Are you tired? Are you weary of the hidden hate you've been holding? Hey, did you lose that love? Ever had it? Are you feeling sad 'cause you did a bad thing? Hey, leave what's heavy, what's heavy behind. Leave what's heavy, what's heavy behind. Leave what's heavy, what's heavy behind. Leave what's heavy, what's heavy behind.
Ladies and gentlemen, Pete Rollins.
So, in the last session, we looked at the notion of anxiety. And I talked about anxiety as a type of experience we have when we live between things. And in particular, I looked at the idea of the anxiety that exists between knowing and unknowing. And I talked about how we can often try to escape this anxiety by either fleeing towards some worldview that promises to have the ultimate answer, or by renouncing the entire pursuit and seeing it as some sort of fool's errand. So using the work of C.S. Lewis and Paul Tillich, I looked at this idea of a third way. Now, the third way wasn't some in-between that exists between knowing and unknowing. It isn't some sort of agnosticism, but rather it is a form of embracing both at the same time. And one of the examples I used was the idea of two people arguing about what truth is. In order to even have the argument, we already have to presuppose truth. So it's not so much that we argue to truth, we argue from it. We are arguing about something we already stand within. So any conclusions we come to about the notion of truth will be fragmented, will be open to change and open to challenge. But those theories themselves somehow rest on a deeper ground. In this way, Truth is attested to in the very seeking of truth. Our very pursuit of the answer is evidence of the answer. Now, Tillich develops a very subtle and sophisticated religious theory that explores how faith is a type of discourse that protects us from two extremes. On the one extreme, we have a type of empty, relativistic, scientistic discourse. And on the other, we have a type of occultic, supernaturalist, absolutist, idolatrous discourse. On one side, we've renounced any notion of the truth, and in the other, we arrogantly think we've grasped it. In contrast, Tillich explores this notion of ultimate concern, in which we need to be taken up in causes. We need to give ourselves over to what we believe is right, all the while having humility and openness to being wrong, committing ourselves with fear and trembling. In this way, faith invites us to embrace and celebrate a type of existence that doesn't lose unknowing in knowing, or knowing in unknowing, but that helps us to somehow embrace and affirm the struggle that these two poles create within us. In this session, I want to talk about a different type of anxiety. An anxiety not between knowing and unknowing, but between having and not having. A type of anxiety that creates desire. Now, the issue here is that we tend to want to grasp something that will fill our desire. We have a tendency to believe that there is something out there that will make us whole and complete in this life or the next. It might be a relationship, it might be money, it might be fame, it might be a certain religious idea, but there's something that can stop up our desire and get rid of this frenetic pursuit that we have. Now, the problem we face is that if we don't get this thing, then we end up being depressed. But on the other side, there's another traumatic experience. And that's when we actually do get the thing that we think will make us whole and complete. Because it's only when we fulfill our dreams that we realize our dreams do not fulfill us. If we think a certain amount of money is going to get rid of this existential experience of lack, then we'll realize that it doesn't work and we'll have to double the amount that we want. If we think a certain job or a certain person is going to make us happy and whole, then if we ever get that, we realize that we're left with a shadow. The philosopher Slavoj Žižek used the analogy of creationism to help us understand this. He said that for some creationists, fossils were put there by God to make the earth look old. So fossils are the remains of something that never actually existed. And Žižek says that this is what this object is like for us. It's called Object A. Object A is the object that you think will fix everything. He says it's just like a fossil in creationism. When you get it, all you have is this dead set of remains of something that doesn't actually exist. We fantasize that it will bring satisfaction, and that's what it promises, but all it produces within us is dissatisfaction. This is why the philosopher Schopenhauer said that we live in a pendulum swing between boredom and pain. There is the pain of not getting what we want, and there is the boredom of getting what we want. One of the ways that this is described in psychoanalysis is the difference between the object of desire and the object cause of desire. The object of desire is what you want, and the object cause of desire is the barriers and the obstacles that get in the way. So for example, if you want a new car and you really, really want this car, and you go to all the showrooms and you do test drives, you look at the magazines, you do all of this research, you save up your money, then you finally get the car, and there's a sense of disappointment after maybe a week or two. And then perhaps you realize that actually all of the things that were getting in the way of you having the car were actually what was generating the desire for the car. It was going through the magazines, doing the test drives, saving up the money. The thing that you thought was getting in the way of getting what you wanted was actually the very thing that generated your desire for it. So when you get the object of desire, you lose the object cause of desire, and therefore you no longer desire what you desire. Hence, we often dream about certain forms of life that we would like when we're older. And then if we get them, we find that they don't satisfy us, because actually it was the challenges to get there that was what generated all of the pleasure and all of the enjoyment. I'll give you a concrete example of this in relationships. So I'm going to give you an example of something that happens a lot. I'm going to call this couple Jack and Jill. Now, Jack and Jill have been married for 10 years, and the desire has slowly dissipated from their relationship. Well, one day, Jack meets this other woman, we'll call her Snow White, and they fall deeply in love. And he wants to be with Snow White, and he always says that he wants to be with her, but he can't because of his marriage, his commitments, his children. Well, anyway, eventually this is found out. Jill discovers the affair. They have a massive argument, and Jill says, "You've got to leave." Jack is absolutely fine about that. The relationship's dead anyway. But then something weird happens. A week passes, and Jack is no longer interested in Snow White. Jack is now interested in Jill. And Jill, although she's angry with Jack, really desires him. And they find themselves again in the heat of passion, just like when they first met. Now, if you were an alien from outer space, this would seem very strange to you. This couple lacked desire for each other. Jack finds somebody else. Jill says you can leave and be with her. So we would expect that Jack would go off with Snow White, Jill would go off and find someone herself. So why does that rarely happen? Well, in this example, you could say that Jack is an obsessive and Jill is an hysteric. An obsessive is someone who really only desires what's impossible, what they don't have, what they can't have, what their friend has. And so Jack desires Snow White because it's impossible. There's this obstacle, his whole family, that stops him from being with her. But once the obstacle's removed, the fantasy dissipates and he's like, no, of course I don't want to be with you. And now the obstacle is between him and his wife, Jill, and he starts to desire her again. Now for Jill, she can only desire what is under threat of being taken away. So her jealousy is evoked by Snow White, and as the jealousy is evoked, so is her desire for Jack. So while they both probably dislike each other, they both are going to be arguing, their underlying desire for each other has never been so strong. And the truth is, many couples go through this cycle many times. What they're frantically trying to do is bring the object of desire and the object cause of desire into the same location. Now, what has all this got to do with Simone Weil and this idea of Aesop's miser? Well, interestingly, Simone Weil, in her book Gravity and Grace, asked this question: what does the miser lose when he loses his treasure? And she's no doubt thinking about Aesop's fable of the miser who never spends his treasure but just counts it every week, and whose treasure is stolen by a thief. Now, the question that Simone Weil brings up is, why is this miser so sad? He never used the treasure. He was never going to use the treasure. So in some way, he didn't lose anything. In fact, that's what the neighbor implies whenever he throws some rocks into the hole and says, count those, it'll do you as much good. But there is something that the miser loses because he is deeply upset. And this is where Simone Weil has this beautiful insight. She says that the miser has found a way of getting satisfaction from living between having and not having. The treasure is a type of quantum indeterminacy in which he neither has it nor loses it and finds some sort of pleasure in that space. We could call this a type of Schrodinger's treasure. Now, the reason why I call this Schrodinger's treasure is because of the famous thought experiment in physics called Schrodinger's cat, in which a cat is placed in a metal box, and the metal box is closed. And in this metal box is some poisonous gas. In addition to that, there is a small radioactive particle in the box and a Geiger counter to measure it. And the whole point of the thought experiment is this, is that supposedly subatomic particles have a type of superpositioning. They don't crunch into a particular position until they're observed. And so this particle that is within the box has a 50% chance of degrading and a 50% chance of not degrading. But technically, until it's observed, it's in superposition. So it's both degraded and not degraded at the same time. And if it degrades, the poisonous gas is released and the cat's killed. And if it doesn't degrade, the gas is not released. So technically, until we open the box and look inside, the cat is both alive and dead at the same time. Right? So in a similar way, this miser has a treasure that he both has and doesn't have at the same time. And in the space of quantum indeterminacy, he finds satisfaction. Now, Simone Weil says that's how desire works. There has to be a type of having and not having. And one of the problems with the miser is that he has an unstable form of maintaining desire. The treasure can be stolen or it can be used. Simone Weil says that we need a more stable form of this. And that's the place of religion. This is the place of faith. Now, I'll give you an example in daily life before I go on to what Simone Weil says about faith. If you take the idea of courtly love, amour courtois, which is where our notion of love comes from, which is from a notion in medieval France, where poets would write about a lady who was married to a lord, but who was in love with a knight. And the knight, in turn, was devoted to and in love with the lady. And in these poems, you would read about how the knight would dedicate his entire life to the lady and do all of these great tasks for her. And they could never be together, and yet they were completely intertwined. There was a golden thread that linked them. They both experienced each other's presence and absence at the same time, and this gave them both a sense of meaning, purpose, and depth within life. For Simone Weil, desire doesn't just bring meaning and depth to our lives. It is central to our subjectivity. It is central to being human. And faith is a language and a practice that keeps this experience of desire alive within us. God is a type of presence that is absence, something that we cannot run from and cannot grasp, something that satisfies and is dissatisfying. Simone Weil doesn't argue for the existence of God, but rather for the need of something that keeps the space of desire open. And faith is central to that task. If we take the example of the crucifixion, Christ is the object cause of desire, the thing that's getting in the way of God. So we want to crucify Christ to get back to God. But we realize that the object cause of desire is the object of desire. In other words, the obstacle to God is God. We also see this in Saul's conversion. Saul is persecuting this small group called the Christians who are getting in the way of the true religion. They are the obstacle that must be gotten rid of. And yet Paul has the insight through this voice that says, "Why are you persecuting me?" And he realizes that the obstacle to the divine is the divine. The object of desire and the object cause of desire, far from being in two different places, are brought together in one and the same place. So for Simone Weil, like Søren Kierkegaard, there is something about faith that is about embracing contradiction, a type of contradiction that is not anxiety producing but life-giving. Now there's different names for this contradiction in different areas of life. In biology, it's called evolution. Evolution is the idea that an organism is not at one with its environment or itself, and this contradiction is what breeds complexity. In physics, as we've just looked at, it's called quantum indeterminacy, that being itself is not at one, and this is what generates everything in the universe. In mathematics, it's called the incompleteness theorem, where mathematics has a type of contradiction hard baked into it, which is what gives it its life, that it cannot prove its own axioms without falling into contradiction. In politics, this is called democracy, where the social body is not one, and that not oneness generates a democratic process that helps civilization. And in religion, for Simone Weil, this is something about the very heart of conversion, entering into this space in which we live in the struggle. In this way, the person of faith is a bit like the scientist whose love for truth is what fuels their pursuit of truth, whose dissatisfaction in their answers provides a certain form of satisfaction. Final example I want to use is from the Bible, and it's the parable of the pearl of great price. Now, on the surface, this is a very simple economic parable. It makes total sense. Somebody finds a parable that is priceless. They sell their possessions to own this priceless pearl. And yet that's complete insanity. Because if all you own is the pearl, then even though you might be the richest person in the world, you don't have any money to buy anything. You can only have money if you sell the pearl. And so we find in this parable a beautiful analogy of what Simone Weil is talking about. That somehow in the richness there is poverty. That somehow in the having there is not having. And this gets us to the heart of what it means to have faith.
If you guys are like me, you're wondering about cat gas after that story that Pete told. I'm gonna have to go back and re-listen to that. Just a few things. I want to get us a summary. At least this is what I heard. Obviously, you guys heard what you heard. The thing I heard the loudest is that we only desire what we can't have. And actually, I don't know if Caroline is on tonight, but Caroline was babysitting the kids this week, and on the way to pick them up from school, we were listening to one of the recent Rob Bell's Robcast, and he was talking about how idea people, sort of the vulnerable underbelly for idea people, which is me, visionaries, is that they can't get anything done because they just live in ideas. And so, and if you've been around the last couple of years at Collective, you know that's been our experience. So in this podcast, Rob basically says, at some point, you have to die to all that fantasy. Do something and let it be what it's going to be. The way Pete said it, maybe the question we're asking is, how then, if we only desire what we can't have, how might we learn, how might we practice learning to desire what we do have? If we're geared to desire what we don't have, how might we learn to desire what we do have, this life? And I think what Pete is proposing is that satisfaction comes from this living between having and not having. And I love the language he used. Faith is the language and practice that keep this desire alive in us. And I think for a collective, we come back each week to an open table, and part of the reason we do this, part of the way this connects to Pete's ideas and to the practice in this community, is that part of the Christian faith is that each week we break bread, or tear rather. We break bread and we pour this cup to symbolize not having. Not having. That at the heart of the Christian tradition is death, is the absence of God, the absence of the sacred object that Pete was talking about. And we do this together, though. So we break the body, we pour the cup to symbolize not having, and we do it together. We do it together at a table, and we speak of the body of Christ, of which we are a part. A body that we do have, even though we don't possess it. So much good stuff. Thank you, Pete. As we continue to reflect on these ideas that Pete shared, these challenging perspectives, we're going to prepare for a great conversation over on Zoom again. Brandon will drop that in the chat right now. We want to remind ourselves that bigger than this series, that collective, our aim is to be a school of love. And our understanding is that love, the love we're talking about, is not lived in abstract ideas, but that love is lived in body and blood. Real life in the real world, that whatever we believe, whatever we think we know, which we obviously don't about God or the sacred, that's where God is. Thank you guys for participating, for being a part of this experience, of this school of love tonight. Your presence, as always, makes us who we are. If you've got elements there, feel free to receive them, enjoy them, this real presence in the gathering of our friendship. Let's continue. We're going to sing and reflect a little bit, and then we'll jump over to Zoom for some great conversation with Pete. Thanks, guys. Go for it. What if our religion was each other? If our practice was our life? If prayer, our words one to another? What if the temple was the earth? If forests were our church, rivers and oceans our holy water? What if meditation was these relationships? If the teacher was life, if wisdom was self-knowledge, if love was the center of our being. That was from Ganja White Thank you guys so much for being with us tonight. You can sign up for the weekly at wearecollectivechurch.com. That's the best way to stay connected. Get on that email list. Again, jump on the youtube.com/wearecollectivechurch. Thank you guys. Thank you so much for being with us online. Your presence makes us who we are. The presence of Pete Rollins is about to make us more who we are over on the Zoom. The link is in the chat. Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. Grace and peace. We'll see you in just a few minutes.